If you want to improve your kidney function, one of the most powerful tools isn't a supplement or a cleanse. It's your plate. Large population studies following thousands of adults show that people who consistently follow diets rich in fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and plant-based proteins have up to a 28 to 30% lower risk of developing chronic kidney disease. Even more interesting, every small improvement in adherence to a Mediterranean-style pattern has been associated with about a 10% lower risk of kidney disease progression. That's not hype, that's measurable change. Your kidneys filter about 180 liters of blood every single day. They regulate fluid balance, control blood pressure, activate vitamin D, and maintain electrolyte stability. One of the key ways we measure kidney function is something called estimated glomerular filtration rate, or eGFR. It tells us how efficiently your kidneys are filtering blood. Another important marker is albuminuria, which measures whether protein is leaking into the urine, an early sign of kidney stress. The goal of improving kidney function isn't about flushing toxins, it's about preserving filtration capacity, reducing stress on the filtering units, called nephrons, and preventing gradual decline. And diet plays a central role. Let's start with fruits and vegetables. In both healthy adults and people with early to moderate chronic kidney disease, higher intake of fruits and vegetables has been associated with better preservation of eGFR and lower rates of albuminuria. Clinical interventions show improvements in kidney filtration comparable to oral bicarbonate therapy in certain patients with stage 3 and 4 chronic kidney disease who have metabolic acidosis. Why would produce affect kidney function so directly? One major reason is acid load. Many Western-style diets produce a higher acid burden that the kidneys must excrete. Over time, constantly processing excess acid increases workload on the nephrons. Fruits and vegetables provide natural base-producing compounds. In simple terms, they reduce the amount of acid your kidneys have to neutralize. That means less strain. These foods are also rich in fiber, antioxidants, and polyphenols. These compounds reduce systemic inflammation and oxidative stress, two processes strongly linked to kidney damage. Studies also show significant reductions in blood pressure when people adopt DASH-style patterns. On average, systolic blood pressure drops by around 9 millimeters Hg and diastolic by nearly the same amount. Since high blood pressure is one of the leading drivers of kidney decline, lowering it directly reduces kidney stress. Higher fruit and vegetable intake has also been associated with a lower incidence of albuminuria and improved serum albumin levels, which reflect better overall nutritional status. Now let's address a common concern. Here's a common myth. If you have kidney issues, you must avoid fruits and vegetables because of potassium. Here's what the evidence actually shows. In monitored settings, many individuals with stage 3 chronic kidney disease who increased fruit and vegetable intake were able to preserve eGFR and improve metabolic acidosis without automatically developing dangerous potassium levels. The context matters. Advanced stage disease requires careful monitoring, but for many earlier stage patients, avoiding produce entirely may remove protective benefits. Next, let's talk about protein, specifically plant-based protein. For years, people were told that all protein is hard on the kidneys, but large meta-analyses suggest something more nuanced. Shifting protein sources from animal-based to plant-based has been associated with about a 26% lower incidence of chronic kidney disease. This is where mechanism becomes important. Animal proteins, particularly red meats and processed meats, tend to cause a stronger hyperfiltration response. Hyperfiltration means the kidney's filtering units temporarily work harder and increase pressure to process the protein load. Repeated over time, this heightened workload may contribute to gradual nephron damage. Plant proteins, including legumes, nuts, and soy, appear to trigger a lower hyperfiltration response. In other words, they ask less of the kidney's filtering system. Plant proteins also come packaged with fiber and magnesium.
Magnesium supports vascular health, which is crucial because kidney function depends on healthy vessels. Fiber helps regulate blood sugar and reduces inflammatory markers such as C-reactive protein. Higher plant-to-animal protein ratios have been associated with slower annual decline in eGFR and lower risk of developing albuminuria. In Mediterranean-style dietary patterns rich in legumes and nuts, significant reductions in LDL cholesterol have also been observed. Why does cholesterol matter for kidneys? Because kidney health is closely tied to vascular health. Damage to blood vessels affects filtration efficiency. Improving lipid profiles may reduce vascular stress within the kidneys. On the other hand, Western-style dietary patterns high in processed and red meats have been associated with significantly higher risk of chronic kidney disease. This contrast highlights that the type of protein matters. Now let's bring in whole grains and fiber. Whole grains are often overlooked in kidney conversations, yet dietary patterns rich in whole grains are linked to improved metabolic efficiency and lower risk of incident kidney disease. Fiber plays several roles. First, it improves insulin sensitivity. Poor blood sugar control is one of the key stressors on the kidney. By stabilizing glucose levels, fiber reduces one of the key stressors on the kidney. Second, fiber changes the gut microbiome. Certain gut bacteria produce compounds that eventually become uremic toxins, substances that the kidneys must filter out. Higher fiber intake helps shift microbial balance towards producing fewer of these compounds. That means less toxin burden reaching the kidneys in the first place. Whole grains also contribute to lower chronic inflammation, reflected in reductions in C-reactive protein levels. Chronic low-grade inflammation is increasingly recognized as a contributor to kidney decline. There's another myth worth addressing. Some people assume refined grains are safer for kidney health because they contain less potassium and phosphorus. While it's true that refined grains have lower mineral content, they also lack fiber and the protective components associated with healthy dietary patterns. Diets built around refined grains are often part of broader Western-style eating patterns that are linked to substantially higher risk of kidney disease. So what does this mean practically? Improving kidney function is less about single superfoods and more about dietary patterns. The DASH and Mediterranean patterns consistently show protective associations. These patterns emphasize daily intake of fruits and vegetables, regular inclusion of legumes and nuts, whole grains instead of refined grains, and reduced reliance on red and processed meats. There appears to be a dose-response relationship. In Mediterranean diet research, each 1-point improvement in adherence score was associated with roughly a 10% lower risk of chronic kidney disease. Small improvements compound. Now let's talk safety. If you have advanced chronic kidney disease, particularly stage 4 or 5, or if you are on dialysis, mineral management becomes critical. Fruits, vegetables, legumes, nuts, and whole grains contain potassium and phosphorus. In advanced stages, the kidneys may not regulate these minerals effectively. However, it's important to understand that phosphorus in plant foods is often bound in phytates, which are less absorbed than the inorganic phosphorus found in processed meats and food additives. Even so, individuals with advanced disease should not dramatically change diet without guidance. Monitoring potassium levels and working with a renal dietitian is essential in later stages. Kidney transplant recipients and individuals with hypertensive kidney disease were also included in some of the research. The associations generally remained favorable, but again, personalized medical guidance matters. If you are in early stages, have risk factors like high blood pressure or diabetes, or simply want to preserve kidney health long-term, gradual shifts can be powerful. Replace 1 serving of red or processed meat per day with legumes or nuts. Swap white bread or refined pasta for whole grain versions. Aim to include fruits or vegetables at most meals. Focus on pattern consistency rather than perfection. Improving kidney function isn't about extremes. It's about reducing cumulative stress on the filtering system over years. By lowering dietary acid load, improving blood pressure, reducing inflammatory markers, supporting vascular health, stabilizing blood sugar, and minimizing hyperfiltration stress. These dietary patterns create an internal environment that is more favorable for long-term filtration capacity. Kidney decline is often silent. eGFR can drop gradually without obvious symptoms until damage is advanced. That's why prevention is so powerful. You don't feel your kidneys working, but every meal influences how hard they have to. The evidence suggests that diets centered around fruits, vegetables, plant-based proteins, and whole grains are associated with preserved eGFR, lower albuminuria, improved blood pressure, reduced inflammatory markers, and lower long-term risk of chronic kidney disease. That's a meaningful set of biomarkers. No single food will transform kidney function overnight, but consistent dietary patterns can shift the trajectory. Your kidneys are designed to last decades. Supporting them isn't about restriction, it's about choosing foods that reduce strain instead of adding to it.
Small daily upgrades compound into long-term protection. And when it comes to kidney function, protection is everything.